Hey guys, this replay was sent in to me by Pants R Dragon, who's in the top 50 Challenger players in North America, so it promises to be a good match. Hope you enjoy. See you at the end. Alright, so let's get into this one then. Alright, so as I said earlier, this is a very high level match. The person who sent it in to me, Pants R Dragon, is actually a top 50 Challenger player in North America. I believe he holds spot number 50 right now. And the first indication of the high level of this game is that we are just about 30 seconds into the match, and already both teams are nearly set up in defensive lines across their jungle. I apologize for these random FPS issues. For some reason my fraps was having some trouble starting up. They do go away as the game goes on. Only, I believe actually that was the last of them, as we're now into the clear here, and both teams have set up defensive lines of scrimmage across their respective jungles, making very neat little lines there on both sides of the river across the map at about a minute into the game here, 30 seconds before the minions are going to spawn. Mundo spamming those taunts there. He does have the corporate Mundo skin. Those emotes that Mundo has are pretty wonderful in that skin, as well as the little bits of paper that fall off of his briefcases, as he has found the Lulu in this bush here. Going to be landing cleaver after cleaver onto her. Auto attacks as well being weaved in there between the cleavers. Flashes forward, the Lulu simultaneously flashes away and manages to sidestep the last cleaver, which very well may have taken her life. So that is no flashes up in the top lane. Both summoners having taken teleport up there too. Neither one have a real combat summoner, so that is the only combat summoner either one of them have being blown there before 2 minutes into this game. The junglers are both probably going to be taking note of the fact that there are no flashes in the top lane, and I expect to see some top lane ganks from this Jarvan and the enemy Lee Sin as well. Jarvan going to be choosing to start at his blue buff. Lee Sin mirroring him in terms of actually mirroring, but not mirroring the buffs, mirroring his position on the map. Going to be going for the red buff first, as I would like to take a moment to talk about the comps here. Down in bot lane, blue team has an Alistar and Tristana combo, which is a very high damage combo early on in the game. Tristana, with the base damage on explosive shot, is able to do a lot of bullying, and Alistar is able to set up situations in which she can bully with that hard-hitting CC that he has. However, Thresh's cooldowns are much shorter than Alistar's, and he does have some good CC of his own. So I think perhaps the Thresh and Corki is going to have the better matchup here down on the bot lane. They will have lower cooldowns in general than the enemy team, and the Thresh throwing out a hook there, hitting level 2, is going to be landing the hook onto the Tristana then getting ignited, but the Alistar is going to get the first blood. Multiple flashes being blown there, as the Tristana does manage to rocket jump away to safety, having picked up rocket jump at level 2, and that is first blood going over to blue team. The Mad Cow down in the bot lane picking that one up. Lee Sin finds Jarvan in the tri-brush near the top lane, as both junglers did go up to the top lane to try and gank, but Lee Sin, realizing that the Jarvan was likely going to be coming up there too, camped in that tri-brush and found him sitting there at fairly low health and managed to take him out. Lee Sin being quite a, well, not take him out actually, just force him to run off, and neither one of them actually managed to get a gank off in the top lane. But Jarvan, not being as good a duelist as Lee Sin is, the Lee Sin coming in trying to assist his friendly Ziggs, lands the Sonic Wave, but Syndra is underneath her tower, and this is too early in the game for Lee Sin to really consider a dive, so he's just there to show some presence, give some backup to the Ziggs in that mid lane, put some fear into the heart of that Syndra mid laner. Up in the top lane, the matchup is a Mundo versus a Lulu, as we saw earlier with that the Mundo bullying out the Lulu before the minions even had spawned. And looks like the Mundo is actually doing quite well for himself. I expected him to be behind in creep, if only because of the ranged advantage and high amount of harass that a Lulu can put out in lane. Alistar going to be using the WQ combo to go in onto this Corki. Lee Sin is here as well. Going to be slowing the Corki with Cripple, then flashing forward to land that Sonic Wave and Resonating Strike, but getting hooked beautifully by the Thresh. Is going to be interrupted before he can finish off that kill. Alistar, though, then going to kill the Thresh. The Lee Sin incredibly low on health, but Jarvan not able to finalize this. He tosses out the flag and drags towards it, getting the kill onto the Lee Sin. That is a kill going over to purple team now, and a kill going over to blue team as well. Alistair having both of the kills for blue team, and Jarvan picking up the first kill for purple team. He does have that blue buff, so he might be able to escape from the Alistair and the Tristana here. Looks like he's probably going to be going for the execute. Alistair not able to catch up in time to do some damage to him. He pops the shield just to ensure that he doesn't give the gold over to anyone on purple team, and he gets executed. Blue team. And he does get executed, the Lee Sin nearly getting it there as he comes back from the base after having died earlier in that lane, but the Sonic Wave not being able to connect with the Jarvan before he's able to get that execute on the bottom inhibitor turret of blue side. Mundo going quite low up here in the top lane. If he sticks around, he might get bursted out by this Lulu, and he does realize that he's going to be going back to base. He does have teleport still up, so he'll be able to get back into lane and keep at least relatively even on that farm. Lulu has managed to pull out a CS lead at this point because she is an intense lane bully, and Mundo has no real way of dealing with that aside from just trying his best to farm with cleavers, which this Mundo has been doing very well. He is on even farm with Lulu, which is quite an accomplishment for a Mundo against a Lulu up in the top lane. Swapping again back down to bot lane, where Alistair has used his 2 kills worth of gold to upgrade that Relic Shield into a Targon's Brace, or the other way around. I always forget which one is which, but upgrade the first iteration of Relic Shield into the second iteration. And Tristana is going to be landing an explosive shot dot onto that Thresh as we move up to the top lane, where Lee Sin is attempting a gank, but Jarvan is there for the counter gank. He's going to be coming in and landing the knockup onto that Lee Sin, who tries to safeguard away as we swap back down to the bot lane, where Alistair's going to be landing a WQ onto Thresh, but then he gets hooked by the Thresh and flayed backward, take quite a massive amount of damage there, going below half health. Hopefully he can sustain up with the procs from Relic Shield as well as his spammable heal ability. The heal from Alistair, healing everyone around him, as well as going the cooldown gets lowered for every enemy minion that dies within a certain radius around him. The cooldown goes down by 1 second, as Alistair going to be on a killing spree now, going in with the WQ and igniting the Corki. Tristana coming in to rocket jump onto him, but her damage was not even really necessary, as the Alistair is now 3-0, doing a lot of work down in this bot lane for blue team, though I'm sure Tristana would have liked a few of those kills. A kill is a kill, and it's going to be perfectly fine for blue team, so long as the kills keep rolling on their way. Lee Sin finally getting level 6 here, clearing out his red buff, and then going back to base. He's on too low health to consider any more ganks after clearing that out, as I have not yet talked about the mid lane, which is a Syndra versus a Ziggs. I don't actually know who to give that matchup to. I would say it's purely a skill-based matchup. Whichever player is the better player is most likely going to win in that one, since they both have very long-range, high-damage abilities, and either one could really burst out the other one fairly quickly. Thresh landing a nice hook on to the Tristana down there in the bot lane, but Alistair shows up now, and Thresh is going quite low, has that dot from Tristana still running on him. Tristana then going to flash forward to finalize that kill. Corki flashing after her, but she nicely sidesteps and gets out of the way of the Q from Corki. The Corki being level 4 to the level 6 of Tristana is in no way ready to handle this duel. Gets headbutted back under the tower by Alistair, who is now on a rampage. 4-0-1 on that Mad Cow down in bot lane, playing a very nice support for his friendly Tristana there. The Mundo getting hit by a lot of harass up in top lane by the Lulu. He does have his ult up though, so if he needs to, he can regenerate that health fairly easily. Looks like Lulu checking her build out with that Phoenix Codex and the Mana Charm. Looks like she wants to go for a Morellonomicon, which would certainly be a nice build against this Mundo. Cutting all of his healing in half with that Grievous Wound is certainly going to be a way for her to deal with that ult. As I say it, the Mundo is going to be using his ult, going after this pink ward, but he now finds the Lulu, came to try and save her pink ward, but maybe bit off a bit more than she could chew. She uses her ult though, and Jarvan is around to get her back, so she is not going to be going down here. She is out of mana though, and fairly low on health, but since the Mundo doesn't have his ult anymore, she decides to stay in lane. The Mundo now walking up onto her, activating Burning Agony, and then using his E to get that extra AD. Gonna flash forward and land a cleaver, but we swap down to bot lane where Lee Sin is going to be leaping behind the Thresh, with a ward hop. Thresh trying his best to escape, gets slowed down by the rocket jump from the Tristana after being kicked backwards by the Lee Sin, who did jump behind him with Safeguard to a ward. Up in top lane, Jarvan finds Mundo all by himself and uses his ult, shouting Dovahkiin and landing on him with that Cataclysm to take him out and finish off that kill. But blue team is taking advantage of the fact that Jarvan is up in top lane and is going for this dragon. They have pink warded it, so they know that purple team does not have any direct vision here. However, they can most likely assume that it's going down by the fact that their Jarvan was top, and most of blue team went Mia for a short amount of time near the dragon pit, so they probably know that that went down and have an approximate timer, but there really wasn't much they could actually do about that, since their jungler had just pulled off a gank in the top lane and invested his time up there. The Syndra trying to take out the Ziggs there, the Ziggs flashing away before she can finish it off, and then tossing out his ult to clear out the minions so that his turret doesn't take too much damage, but that is Ziggs' flash burn, essentially only for Syndra's ulti, which is a much shorter cooldown than flash, so the Syndra are going to be perfectly happy with that trade, as she's going to be using Scatter the Weak and her Q and W to make short work of that next minion wave and push up her minions out of the tower to deny the Ziggs any more CS before he gets back to lane. Mundo being forced to use his ult there as Jarvan shows up in the top lane. He throws out another briefcase there, trying to slow down the Lulu from a chase, and does manage to discourage her and the Jarvan from chasing onto him, but he did have to burn his ult, though his ult is really not that terribly long of a cooldown, so it's really not that big a deal. And speaking of Mundo, I would like to point out the fact that the Thresh on the opposing team from the Mundo did take Ignite, and that very well could be because of the Mundo, since the enemy team doesn't really have any true assassins. Instead, they have the super tank in the form of Mundo, and so the Ignite could be very well an informed decision made, because the enemy Mundo is going to be regenerating a lot of health, and the Ignite's going to help against that. Also, Ignite is a powerful tool in the lane. It does quite a lot of damage, as well as providing vision for if the enemy tries to escape into a bush. So, nice little conscientious pick up there from the Thresh, getting that Ignite for himself rather than the Exhaust, since the enemy team didn't really require an Exhaust. It would have still been nice for the Ziggs, no doubt, but Ziggs most likely is going to be far enough away that Thresh can't really exhaust onto him unless he dives past multiple members of the enemy team, which he can be doing sometimes when he lands a nice hook, but most of the time he's going to be wanting to peel for his AD carry, as the Mundo popping his ult and chasing after Lulu with the Lee Sin here, but they didn't really realize that there's a Jarvan in the bush. The Mundo just getting to walk through that Jarvan ult for free. It bugs out a little bit there, and the Mundo manages to escape, Jarvan being forced to flash away so that the Lee Sin can't finish him off, and that was multiple ults and flashes burned up in the top lane to no avail for either team, neither side getting anything but some cooldowns from the other. Hook being thrown out by Thresh there, but it goes a little bit wide on the Tristana. Tristana responds by tossing out an explosive shot dot onto that Corki. It's a fun word to say, explosive shot dot. Dot being a damage over time, for those of you who don't know that particular acronym, DOT, damage over time effect, which the explosive shot active does do. The Tristana, now left all alone by her Alistar, who went to ward, is forced to use Buster Shot to save her life, but the Alistar is going to be pulverizing and then headbutting back onto this Thresh, who's in a bit of a dangerous situation, pops the box to try and save himself. A teleport is coming in from the Lulu top behind the enemy blue team. She's going to be coming in. The Corki gets the kill onto the Tristana. Mundo also teleported in, though. This is just an all-out brawl down in the bot lane. Ziggs throws his ult down, gets some damage onto the Corki, and clears out a bunch of minions. Corki now in a bit of a dangerous spot against this Mundo. Mundo does get the kill onto Corki, but now he's also in a dangerous spot. But the enemy team backs off. He does have his ult still running and is regenerating some health despite that grievous wounds from the Lulu, who did in fact build a Morellonomicon. Lee Sin coming around, going to be diving into the tower onto the Lulu, who is here after teleporting down. She does go down in the end to the Ziggs, but then the Lee Sin goes down to the Jarvan as Mundo and Ziggs walk off behind the enemy tower. There's a Syndra around, though. Mundo throwing out a cleaver, or rather a briefcase, to slow down that Syndra, and Ziggs throwing out the mines. The blue team here in the Ziggs and the Mundo doing a very good job of kiting out that Syndra, not able to kite her out enough to save the Mundo's life, but certainly kite her out enough to be able to take revenge for that kill she got onto Mundo. And after all of that action, that leaves the blue team up by about 3,000, perhaps even, about 4,000, I'd say, gold, as well as 6 kills, as they are now going after this blue buff here. But Thresh is around and wards them away by warding, so the blue team doesn't want to risk going for that blue buff invade and instead simply returns to lanes to farm out there as Thresh places a pink by the blue buff to clear out any potential wards with which the Lee Sin might have been planning to try a smite steal against the Jarvan, who is now on his way to blue buff and going to be taking that, probably going to be giving it over to his allied Syndra, who's been doing fairly well in lane for herself, has the highest CS in the game, against a Ziggs no less. However, the Ziggs does have a 3-kill lead to her 1 kill, so he's certainly not behind in terms of gold, just in terms of CS. Alright, we've got a bit of a lull in the action again, and I would like to at this point talk about team comps. The purple team's team comp is much more pick-oriented with a Syndra and a Thresh, though they do have some decent teamfight as well with the Lulu and Jarvan. It's not really high damage teamfight though, as it is high crowd control teamfight. The knock up and the Cataclysm being able to hold people in place for the Syndra and Thresh and Corki to do their jobs of picking someone off and killing them nearly instantly with that Syndra ulti, as well as the long-range pick from Thresh and Syndra. She does have a long-range pick as well, Scatter the Weak having a very long range as we see her using it now onto the Ziggs. The Ziggs then flashing away, getting ulted by the Jarvan, using Satchel Charge to escape the ult, but goes down in the end to the Syndra ult, which follows him past through the Satchel Charge. No escaping that, and he gets shut down by the Syndra, giving that killing spree gold over to her. She's got to be happy with that. As up in the top lane, Mundo has fallen a bit behind on the CS, and his tower has certainly fallen behind on health, as the Lulu has been bullying him over and over. Now with this completed, Marlenomicon can do an even better job of bullying him, since with every auto attack when he's below half health, she does proc the magic damage from picks, and thus applies a Grievous Wounds passive, reducing his regeneration by half, I believe. But Mundo has been doing well enough for himself to stay relevant in this game. He does have 107 CS to the Lulu's 130, so it's a significant lead for Lulu, but Mundo is certainly not out of it, and he's showing us that right now as he's going on to the Lulu. Has Burning Agony running, as well as Masochism. He does a bunch of damage to her, but chooses to back off, perhaps sensing that Jarvan was waiting in that bush. Lulu perhaps was baiting that one out, and he realized it since she hadn't used her ultimate in that whole engagement, and he was probably wondering why she hadn't done that. And it's because there was a Jarvan in the bush, and she was trying to bait him just a little bit further back so that they could secure that kill. But blue team does manage to get this second dragon spawn, while purple team invested their resources up in the top lane with that Jarvan waiting in the bush there. And they do get the tower. They don't get the kill onto Mundo, and Mundo now finds Jarvan. Jarvan just going to be able to flag and drag away, though I don't know if Mundo can chase him through that. Mundo does have the cleaver spam, though, going to be slowing him, maybe going under this tower after him. He does go under the tower. The Jarvan forced to flash away. Is Mundo able to finish off this kill? Jarvan uses Golden Aegis to get some shield back, and Mundo tries to flash away from that last tower auto attack, but flashes within tower range and still gets targeted by it after the flash and goes down, giving a kill over to Jarvan, but still taking out the kill onto Jarvan. So it's a 1-for-1 trade up in the top lane, with blue team still ahead in gold here. The Sonic Wave landing from Lee Sin there, but it's a bit too far of a dive for him to contemplate. Thankfully, he didn't have Lee Syndrome there, because he probably would have died if he hadn't gone in on that resonating strike after hitting his Sonic Wave there. Thresh finds a ward deep in the jungle and clears that out, denying a bit of vision from blue team. As this is a high-level game, as I've said a few times now, and one of the ways you can tell that is by checking across the map at virtually any given time, and you'll see at least 5 or 6 wards total from both teams, usually 5 or 6 wards from each team, as in a total of 10. Unless you're just at the end of a Sightstone cycle, or someone who's doing what Lulu is doing right now and clearing out a lot of vision. She just got 3 wards total with that, finding 2 enemy pink wards as well as placing her own and finding one in that little death bush near the dragon pit. But yeah, vision is a very key component of higher level games and a not so key component of lower level ones. Jarvan going to be sweeping out that bush and finding a trinket, but bullied away from the trinket ward that he wanted to take out there by the fact that the Mundo was nearby. Alistair now going back on the path which Lulu swept and trying to sweep it out himself. He places a ward over the wall there. Perhaps didn't see that pink ward that he walked across, or perhaps doesn't want to do it because the Thresh is nearby and could certainly catch him out if he went for it. Now he's going to decide to go for it, autoing it once, but then Corki shows up and he leaves. Tales of ward fights, isn't it fun, everybody? As up in the top lane, the Mundo and the Lulu still going at it. Mundo landing cleaver after cleaver, and Lulu landing glitter lance after glitter lance. Both of them trading blow for blow. The Lulu at about the same percentage of health as the Mundo, though I'm sure she's not at the same amount of health. Mundo probably having quite a bit more, but in terms of percentages, they're about equal. Corky now, with his rockets stacked up, is going to be shooting those out as harass. He does use Valkyrie to avoid some return harass from the Ziggs, and that ward that I was talking about earlier finally goes down. The Alistair going to be able to take that one out for himself after trying to get it earlier but being harassed away. He has a few more teammates around now. He's able to take advantage of that to clear out that pink ward in the little death brush, where pink wards are very likely to sit since teams don't usually walk through there too often. Though it's been a little while now with pink wards being out and being having an infinite duration, and more people have caught on to the fact that people like to put pink wards in that bush, so it's become less and less of a safe space, as the Syndra going to be picking up the blue buff there and saying, "This is mine," and throwing it back on the ground and getting the blue buff for herself. That is the second blue buff of the game, going over to that Syndra, though I believe it's the third blue buff of the game total. She lands a nice Scatter the Weak onto Lee Sin there, follows it up with the Q and W and the Ignite as well as the ult. He does go down in the end to that final tick of Ignite as we swap up to the top lane, where Mundo and Lulu are going at it. The Lulu uses her ult to try and survive that matchup, and does indeed end up surviving that matchup. The Mundo deciding to back off after the Lulu's ult is burned. Lee Sin did go down here in the mid lane earlier, but Purple Team doesn't seem to have the ability to take advantage of the man advantage they have here now, not being able to get any engages here. The Syndra using Scatter the Weak, but missing the stun on the Tristana. Tristana just sidestepping that one fairly neatly. We swap back up to top lane, where Lulu has found a pink ward in the bush there, and is going to be trying her best to harass out this Mundo. However, Mundo is going to be rushing towards her with Burning Agony up, throwing cleavers. She does manage to dodge the first briefcase. She does not dodge the second, though, and then Mundo decides to back off at that point, having gone a bit farther than he was comfortable with a continued chase, and Jarvan going to be sweeping out that Tri-Brush and getting that ward, as Mundo's ult is back up again once more, and he's going to use that just for some sustain in the lane. It does give a speed buff as well, but the sustain is the most important part of it. Down on the other side of the map, the Zig's going to be clearing out a ward with his sweeper. As I said earlier, vision is a very important part of higher level games, and as such, sweeper trinkets are as well. You can look at the trinkets on both teams. Each team has 3 red trinkets at about 22 minutes, though I'm sure they picked them up earlier and I simply wasn't paying attention to that at that particular moment. But yeah, red trinkets are much more highly prized in higher level games than they are in lower level ones, where people seem to like to have that safety of the trinket ward. Either that or they just forget to change out for a new trinket when they hit level 9 or later. The Lee Sin sitting in that Tri-Bush, going to be ambushing the Corki. The Corki then taking the Dark Passage from Thresh, though, going to be taken to safety by that Lantern. The Lee Sin's ult is down now, and pretty much all for naught there. The Corki taking a bit of damage, but he does have some sustain in his build, as well as the ability to go back to base if he really has to, so he doesn't really lose too much from that, as Alistair's kind of trapped in the Dragon Pit here. Might have to flash over the wall. He does pulverize onto the Thresh. The Dragon then spawns and is auto-attacking onto this Alistair. Alistair gets hooked as Lee Sin gets caught out by the Lulu, who has come down here to join the fight. She didn't burn teleport, though. She walks down here. Jarvan now flashing forward to Cataclysm onto the Alistair and the Tristana, both of whom go down to the Syndra, who is now 5-1, doing really well for herself, coming out of that mid lane where she was a little bit behind about maybe 8 or so minutes ago. Thresh going dangerously low to the Ziggs damage. He nearly goes down, but the Lulu ult saves his life. Ziggs now in a dangerous situation. The Ignite does land onto the Jarvan, and he does go down to the Ziggs. However, Ziggs goes down to Lulu after the Mundo has teleported down to try and help his teammates, but it looks like he's just sealed his own doom. Actually, no, the Mundo is not going to be doomed. He has way too much health regeneration for that to be true, as he's now going to be chasing after the Thresh and the Lulu, landing cleavers after cleavers, throwing out another one onto the Thresh, landing that and doing some damage and slowing him, but Syndra's nearby. He throws a cleaver onto her, just throwing cleavers at everybody right now. Corky's showing up from the other side, using that true damage and the armor shred from his Gatling gun, going to be able to break through all that tankiness that Mundo has. Thresh nearly going down before Mundo does, but Mundo does go down before he does, and so he does not. However, Lee Sin has shown up now, lands a Sonic Wave onto the Corki, but does not want to go in onto that too much possibility of the enemy team being nearby enough to help out the Corki and kill off the Lee Sin, as Dragon never went down in that whole engagement. And so Lee Sin and Alistair are doing this here, and the Tristana has shown up. Rocket jumps near to the Corki, but that might have been a fatal mistake. It is indeed a fatal mistake, as Syndra has showed up and used all of her burst onto that Tristana, and then flashes over the wall and igniting and using her Q onto the Lee Sin, picks up a double, and then with a final Q there onto the Alistair, picks up a triple kill, putting her at 8-1, doing really well for herself, especially considering where she was just a little while ago. Sorry for the camera movement there. I must have slipped the mouse as we get a bit of a lull in the action. Thankfully, my throat is becoming hoarse here with all this heart-pounding action going on near the Dragon Pit, with both teams trying so desperately to secure that objective, which is another hallmark of higher-level games. The objectives are far more important. They're much more contested than in lower-level games. They tried to go for a dragon there, and it took 2 team fights and a full, 3 to 5 minutes. I'm not exactly sure exactly how long, but it took a good few minutes and a few team fights before the dragon finally was secured by one team or the other. They put up a fight. Both sides put up a deadly fight for that dragon. Really wanted all that gold. And speaking of gold, there's been a turnaround on the scoreboard. Purple team is now in the lead with that dragon they just picked up, as well as their 1 turret lead and 2 kill lead. They are 2,000 gold in the lead, nearly exactly. Alistair, getting caught here by the enemy support and AD carry duo, is down to half health already. The Thresh pops the box. Thresh getting taken dangerously though by the Tristana. A few lucky crits there from the Tristana, who has completed her Infinity Edge, is going to secure the kill onto that Thresh. Alistair and Tristana coming out ahead in that 2v2 matchup down in the bot lane. The Mundo and the Lee Sin going after the tower up here in the top lane. However, Jarvan has shown up, as down on the bottom side of the map, Corki is in a 1v1 with Tristana, but Tristana just has too much damage for him to take. The Corki, only having completed 1 item to the Tristana's 2, is not going to be able to sustain a 1v1 really, and does go down in the end, evening up the kill score on the board and nearly evening up the gold score, as Tristana gets another 2 kills for herself down in the bottom lane. Mundo being forced back there by the Lulu, who is able to do a good amount of damage to him, as well as applying that grievous wounds, as I said earlier, with every auto attack. A nice stun from the Syndra landing onto Ziggs, but Lee Sin is nearby. However, that doesn't matter. The Ziggs goes down to the now legendary Syndra, who manages to get that kill with her ulti. I really did not think that would be enough damage, but she does much more damage than I expected, and now she's harassing the Lee Sin over the wall, throwing his own Wraith at him. He smites it out just to avoid it being stolen. Lulu teleporting up to the top lane to try and save that tower, but she could not. The tower goes down to the Mundo despite her attempts, and the Mundo now engaging onto her, but after she burns her ulti, the Mundo decides better of it and walks away, not wanting to fight her any longer. And both members of the top lane just disengaging there. However, Mundo did manage to secure a tower for his team and put his team up 1 in the lead in terms of towers on the map, at 3 towers for blue team and 2 for purple. Bit of a lull in the action again, and while I have a lull in the action, I would like to talk about builds, if I may. The Lulu going full AP out of that top lane, not going for any utility items at all, which most Lulus do in the top lane. It is a damage Lulu build, so she's gone for a lot of penetration, as well as the Morellonomicon for some cooldown reduction, and that Grievous Wounds passive, which is so useful when you're laning against a Mundo. And, the Tristana rushed a Static Shiv and then an Infinity Edge, getting a lot of crit into her build, and it paid off earlier as she was fighting against that Thresh and Corki and managed to get a lucky 2 crits in a row there to finish off the Thresh in a situation where perhaps if she hadn't had as much crit as she had, she might not have won that fight. So the build's certainly paying off, as we see Syndra just sweeping off a ward there in the mid lane, and Thresh and Corki pushing up bot lane, going to be possibly going for this tower. The Corki has built his Trinity Force and has those improved Sheen procs from it, and so is going to be able to take out the tower fairly quickly, trying to leave the last few minions to take it out perhaps. Alistair sweeping in around behind them, A flash going to be burned. I'm not entirely sure who flashed there. Alistair using his ulti to reduce some of the damage from the enemy team as Jarvan has shown up. He's going to headbutt the Jarvan back, use Mikhail's Crucible to heal himself as well as the Relic Shield, but it's just not enough damage mitigation as Corki does manage to get the kill onto him. The Mundo now teleporting down bot lane, again walks straight out of the Jarvan ultimate. Mundo does indeed go where he pleases, not caring about any Cataclysm, as it is a 4v4 now in the bot lane, both mid laners having roamed down as well as teleport being used by the Mundo. And Mundo going to be rushing forward with his ult Rang, trying to land a cleaver onto that Syndra, but missing, not being able to slow her down. Blue team's going to peel off back up towards the Dragon Pit, but Dragon is not up and won't be for another minute. So they still have some time before they can go for that objective, as Lulu split pushing in the mid lane does not have teleport up. I tell a lie. But she is fairly nearby in the mid lane and can speed buff herself with Whimsy to get in close if she needs to. As a turret goes down in the bot lane, it had barely any health left, it was essentially down anyways, but the gold is finally given over to purple team, who even up the turret score at 3 and 3 and are a little bit ahead in terms of gold now at about 1,000 gold lead or so. Purple team going to be basing in this Tri-Brush, but Dragon is up in about 30 seconds, so this might be a bit of a mistake. If they all base right now, it's essentially giving a free Dragon over to Blue team, which would bring them back in this game. Blue team, Lee Sin and Alistair both warding that bush at the same time, so that bush is very, very seen from Blue team. They know what is happening in that Tri-Brush. 10 seconds now on the Dragon spawn, with multiple members of Blue team around it. Jarvan, on his way back from base, does have his flag and drag to get in there a bit more quickly if he has to, as Dragon is now live, and Jarvan is around to be able to contest this. Ziggs trying to zone him out, though, throwing a very nice minefield there right in the ramp to slow him down and deal some damage if he tries to come over, and then sweeping out that ward, going to be taking it out. And now Purple team has no vision onto this Dragon. However, they are going to be coming in as a unit to try and deter Blue team from taking it. The Syndra lands a perfect scatter of the week onto the Alistair. The Thresh hook just barely missing. Probably would have sentenced him to death if that had hit. But even so, he went down to about a quarter health. And now the main, well, one of the two tanks from Blue team is low on health. They still do have Mundo to tank though, but Mundo gets stunned up by the scatter of the week. I might have to eat my own words as he does go down in the end to the Syndra. Syndra is a legendary once more, and Purple team has not lost a member yet, whereas Blue team has just lost their main tank, Mundo. And the Dragon is being engaged upon by Purple team now. Jarvan going to be tanking that up with the Lulu shield as well as his own Golden Aegis, allowing him to take a lot of damage from that Dragon, and he manages a perfect smite against this Lee Sin, who came in with his Sonic Wave Resonating Strike onto the Dragon and nearly took it out. The Ziggs now chasing after the Jarvan, flashes forward and throws out the Bouncing Bomb to secure that kill onto Jarvan, but still, that's only one kill going over to Blue team, and Purple team got 4 as well as a Dragon, so that certainly puts them ahead in this game by about 5,000 or so gold. But, to be fair, Blue team does have a decent late game team comp, with the Ziggs for wave clear to prevent the enemy team from pushing in onto towers very effectively, and the Tristana with that really high scaling late game carry-esqueness. I'm not entirely sure where I was going with that, but she does scale very well into the late game, is a more simple way of saying it, with the intense attack speed buff on her Q, Rapid Shot. The Lulu got some good damage there onto the mid lane, but Ziggs showed up in time to stop her from taking that, as two members of Purple team managed to counter jungle the enemy team, not giving up, not saying no to any advantage they could possibly take while they have the ability to take it, and going to be taking that red buff from the enemy team while the enemy team has no way to really contest them from doing so. That's another hallmark of higher level games, taking every advantage you can take whenever you can take them. Syndra using Scatter the Weak, but it didn't have any orbs in it, and so it did not stun out the Alistair under the tower, perhaps just fumbled with her fingers there. Does land the stun onto Alistair with the second try, though, then ults the Alistair, but Alistair uses his ult right in the middle of Syndra's, and so mitigates about 75% of that damage, just flat out reduces it by 75%, and so he manages to survive, but that is Syndra's ult traded for Alistair's, and I actually believe it's a good thing for Blue team, since Alistair's ult is not nearly as important in these team fights as the super fed Syndra's, who is 11-1 currently, and has a Zanya's Death Cap Athene's and Void Staff already completed. That is 4 items built at about 34.5 minutes into this game. She has a very impressive creep score of 302, as well as a very impressive KDA of 11, 1, and 4. Tristana nearly getting hit by the scatter with a weak there in the mid lane, but does manage to sidestep it just in time, or perhaps she was a little bit out of range. I'm not able to, wasn't quite sure. The Lulu going to be taking that red buff just so that it's going on respawn cooldown as quickly as possible. It's good to cycle out your buffs as quickly as you can so that you get them up as often as you can. It's not a good idea to leave a buff sitting if you can avoid it. And meanwhile, Lulu's going to be pushing out the mid lane with that red buff, as multiple members of both teams are going to be closing in on this mid lane, where it's the only lane left with outer turrets. So it looks like we're going to have an impromptu ARAM. They even happen in Challenger, folks. Just seems like people are drawn to the mid lane to in groups to just team fight there in the mid lane, probably because it's the shortest lane and the most important lane for map control purposes, seeing as it's next to both Dragon and Baron, as well as opens up a lot more of the map when you take out a turret there. And I actually lied earlier when I said that it's the only lane with outer turrets standing, though I suppose I could catch myself and say that it's the only lane with outer turrets standing, in that it has a outer turret standing, but what I meant was both were, and in fact both are not. I'm a liar, or I'm just blind. Anyways, Zig's throwing out a lot of poke towards the enemy team. It looks like blue team has the better ARAM comp here, as Mundo and Ziggs are both very good for extended pokey-ish teamfights-ish engagements. It's not really a team fight when you don't really ever engage, but it is 2 teams fighting, so I suppose it's something of a team fight, as the enemy team does have a lot more pick potential with the Thresh and the long-range hook from him, as well as the long-range stun from Scatter the Weak, and Jarvan's ability to cover a lot of ground with his EQ combo and the Cataclysm. Jarvan going to be trying to help the Syndra finish off that kill there onto the Alistar, poking over the wall with his Dragon Spear. Does manage to take a bit of the health away from the Alistar, who then gets ulted by the Syndra, but he again interrupts the Syndra ult with his own ult, managing to mitigate enough of the damage to survive, though he does go down quite low, and that is Alistar's ulti burned, so a lot of tankiness gone from blue team, but also a lot of damage gone from purple team. So really the same trade we saw earlier happens again. While we've got a bit of a break from the action here, I would like to comment on the Mundo's build. He's gone for a lot of health, a lot of magic resistance, and the ability to respawn. He's gotten a Guardian Angel as his 3rd item here. Fairly uncommon to do that. Ziggs tossing out his ult there to try and take out that blue buff. Does not manage to do it, though. They did get the timer on that earlier when Tristana walked over to check it while the enemy team was busy dancing around in the mid lane, but they don't manage to take it out. The Syndra taking it for herself, getting another blue buff. Certainly going to be happy with that cooldown reduction, as she does not actually have very much cooldown reduction built into her build. Has gone more for just a high bursty damaging build, which seems to be working out for her. She is 11 and 1 at this point. The Ziggs opting for a high damage build as well, looking to do as much AoE damage as he can to the enemy team. The Jarvan, realizing this, has picked up a Spectre's Cowl, probably going to be turning that into a Banshee's Veil, but perhaps a Spirit Visage. The cooldown reduction would be quite nice on him. The unique passive, though, of increased self-healing would not be as nice, though it is very nice on Mundo, who has chosen to pick one up, partially because of the unique passive, and probably partially because the Syndra is doing so well on the enemy team, and that magic resistance is going to be very nice for him. Ziggs going to be taking his blue buff, Jarvan trying to steal that, but being a bit too late to the party to be able to do so. Corki pushing up this lane with 2 of his friends, as all that's there to defend him is the Mad Cow, but Ziggs shows up in time to clear out the wave with those masses of bombs that he can throw out. Corki has caught the Lee Sin here. A nice Thresh hook comes across the wall and lands onto him, and Corki is now on a rampage, taking out the Lee Sin. Thresh forced to flash over the wall to escape the enemy team, as purple team takes out the dragon here just a little, probably about 10 seconds after it respawns. It goes right down again. These players really do not like dragons. They don't like to see them up for very long. They take them out as quickly as they possibly can. As purple team now rushing towards the Baron pit, looks like they might want to be going for this, or perhaps just are going to bait it. Yeah, they're going to sit in that little death brush there where the enemy team does not have any wards. It was swept out, and they do have a pink ward nearby as well. Ziggs coming a little bit too close, gets hit by the Scatter the Weak, and then immediately bursted out by the Syndra, just deleted off the map there. Syndra, a legendary again, Alistair now hooked up, and despite the damage reduction on his ult, is going to be going down here to the unstoppable Corki. Purple team now, no longer baiting the Baron, are going to simply do the Baron. But Mundo and Tristana are going to push up the mid lane. They do get that outer turret. Still a worth trade for Purple team, I would say. It might even still be worth considering that Tristana, with her huge amounts of attack speed, is going to be taking this inner mid turret. Possibly still worth, I'm not sure. Doing the math, it's about the same amount of gold, and Purple team gets that Baron buff themselves as well, though they do lose a good amount in map control, giving up those turrets. But the extra gold, as well as the artificial gold which Baron buff gives in terms of stats, is going to be quite nice. And if they can make use of that Baron buff to take out an equal amount of turrets, or perhaps even more, then it will certainly have been worth the trade to this Tristana, who pushed up the mid lane while they were doing Baron, and took out 2 turrets with her huge amounts of attack speed. Purple team now regrouping with that purple buff circling around all 5 of their members. Blue team also regrouping, but sadly for them, they do not have the same purple buff. That belongs only to Purple team right now, as they're going to be pushing up the mid lane. Mundo getting stunned out by a Scout of the Week there, but it's Mundo. He's not really in a situation where he can get instantly bursted by the Syndra, despite the fact that the Syndra is now 12-1. The Syndra finding a pink ward from the enemy team, going to be taking that out for herself, as Lulu takes yet another red buff. It has respawn now. She's going to be clearing that out, keeping those buff cooldowns rotating. And Purple team going to be invading into the enemy team's jungle. The Corki caught out there by the Alistair, and the Tristana tries to Valkyrie over the wall, but ends it a little bit short and is forced to flash away after failing his Valkyrie over the wall. A little bit of a mistake there, probably just clicked the button a little wrong, or fat-fingered it, as the Alistair now getting stunned up and then cataclysmed. Looks like he might go down. He does flash away, though, while his ult is running, and uses Relic Shield to mitigate a bit more damage and saves his own life there. Syndra throwing out another Scout of the Week, trying to stun up the Lee Sin, but does not connect with it. Now it is a 4v5 down in the bot lane, but the team with 4 does have a Baron buff, as well as a Lulu who's split pushing the top lane and can teleport in anytime she needs to. Jarvan standing under the tower, taking a few tower hits there, so that his minions can get up unimpeded by this Ziggs. He walks under the tower to get a few auto attacks onto it with some of his teammates, and they do bring it down to about half health, but Ziggs does have a lot of wave clear and is able to clear out those minions before they can bring it down. However, Ziggs is not in the top lane, and the Lulu has managed to split push and get a turret for Purple team, putting them at 4-5 right now. Blue team actually still having a lead in terms of turrets because of that trade of 2 turrets for Baron. Lulu now on the inhibitor turret, though, going after this Mundo, going to be using those Lich Brain procs to do quite a bit of damage to the turrets when she does get onto them, so that is why she's able to split push so effectively. The Mundo down below half health, getting hit up by that Grievous Wounds passive, as multiple members of Blue team have backed off from this turret down in the bot lane. They don't want to stick around and get dove anymore. Which probably would have happened, seeing as many of them were low on health, and so they choose instead to give up the tower rather than getting dove upon dying and giving up the tower anyways. Alistair popping a ward over the wall, but it gets cleared out there. Too many members of Purple team around to allow that to stick around alive. And the Ziggs getting stunned out at max range there, but Purple team can't really follow up onto it, as they are now pushing onto inhibitor towers in both the top and bot lane. The inhibitor tower in top lane actually falling to this Lulu, who has been split pushing this whole time very effectively. Mundo not really able to stop her. Even when she gets near to the tower, he can't really stop her because he doesn't have enough wave clear to clear out those minions before she can auto-attack the tower a few times and get those Lichbane procs onto it. The Alistair trying to hold down this Lulu long enough for Mundo to come up and help him out with her, but they end up only giving up another turret in the mid lane, and now they have lost their turret lead as well as giving up that Baron earlier, and they are 7-5 in terms of turrets, 7 being Purple team and 5 being Blue team, who's at a 2-turret disadvantage now, as well as about a 10,000 gold disadvantage. Purple team just stacking up these advantages slowly and slowly across the map. Blue team trying to catch out this Corki down here. Lee Sin does land the Sonic Wave, but doesn't want to follow up too many people friendly to the Corki around for him to seriously consider that option. As Lee Sin just going to secure herself another blue buff. And we return to another break in the action here. And since we did, I'd like to talk about builds again. The Syndra is at full build. She has gone with the Deathcap, Zanya's, Chalice, and Void Staff she had earlier, and has also opted for a single defensive item, getting a Banshee's Veil, which is a very nice pickup against the enemy team since they don't have very much hard engage, so having a Banshee's Veil means that they have to use more than one of their few engage tools onto her to be able to catch her out. Lee Sin going to be clearing out his wolves while he has the chance. Blue team just trying to catch up as best they can onto this farm during this time where they're not forced back into their base, and purple team is going to be doing this dragon. It is warded by blue team, but I really don't think they can contest. Ziggs just throwing out his bomb, his ultimate, in a sort of token gesture as a way to say, yes, we see you and we are going to try, but they don't actually manage to get it, and Jarvan now has found these wards in the little bush near the enemy team's red buff and is going to be taking those out, and looks like purple team wants to regroup once again, maybe go after this Lee Sin up in the top lane, but he is currently basing. It looks like he's going to get back to base before the enemy team can catch up to him. And now it looks like purple team wants to regroup up in the top lane where there is an open inhibitor and go after that, using their gold advantage to take out that inhibitor and get themselves a map control advantage. Two wards here right next to each other for purple team. Jarvan probably didn't mean to place both of those at once. And the Lee Sin sweeps them and takes them both out, but over in the top lane, the Mundo gets his Guardian Angel popped almost instantly after being hooked, but thankfully he does have that Guardian Angel and is able to revive with about fully half of his health left and is regenerating it up very quickly. Basically, he did lose his Guardian Angel, but he's back up at full health again, and he's doing just fine. Hopefully he doesn't get hooked and bursted out like that one more time. But the Syndra's ult is now on cooldown as well as the Thresh's ult, so blue team might be able to go for a fight here. This might be a time when they have a little bit of a window to try and fight the enemy team, especially since Lulu is off in the mid lane. If they can get a burst down quickly enough onto an important member. The Alistar going in with Headbutt and Pulverize, but not being able to have any follow-up from his team onto that Corki. Corki now landing some auto attacks onto the inhibitor while Lulu is split pushing bot. If they just keep letting themselves get bled bit by bit dry here, they are going to lose this game eventually if they just keep letting that Lulu pressure them while they don't try and engage into the 4v5. They really need to go for this 4v5 here. Jarvan using Flag and Drag to escape, and the speed buff being popped by the Thresh, who has gone for that Talisman of Ascension, keeps them away from this potential engage from the blue team, as Lulu's using her shield to tank up those tower hits and just land those Lichbane procs onto it. Ziggs now down in the bot lane trying to clear out those minions before Lulu can take the tower, but because he's not here in the top lane, a inhibitor goes down and Lulu gets the turret in the bot lane anyways. Tristana now trying to use Buster Shot to knock the Lulu against the wall and keep her in place, but she's a bit too quick for that, and the Buster Shot ends up at the wrong angle and simply helps her escape, as purple team now is going to be going for this Baron, it looks like. No, they're going to be trying to bait it again, standing inside the pit just around the corner there, waiting for the blue team. I wonder if they're going to fall for this one. The Alistar coming in, places a ward over the wall, but Lee Sin is a bit too close. He gets caught out by the Jarvan, nearly goes down. Does he go down? No, he does not. The Alistar now in the middle of 4 members of the enemy team. And the Lulu is on a killing spree down in the bottom lane where off screen where the Ziggs goes down, and now the Corki is dominating. And with that, the replay ended. Corrupted forever. We will never know who won. No, just kidding. We know. It was purple team. Purple team won. Thanks for watching. Hi there, sorry about that corruption there at the end, but sometimes the replay files don't cooperate entirely. I did get nearly a full match out of it though, and purple team won. So, thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed it. Oh, and if you want your replay featured on the channel, check the description. Figure out how to do that there.